This is the American Indians, indigenous peoples' truths. Justice for all, the most dangerous show on media anywhere.
Hello.
OCO, Taishu, Shadana Lai, Alito, Sikan. I'm Jay Winter Nightwolf, the originator and host of this broadcast, Jay Winter Nightwolf Live. Leslie, would you do us the honor of giving the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, I certainly will. Let's pause for a moment to acknowledge the traditional stewards of the lands that we reside on, and especially their ancestors, descendants, and all indigenous people who live now and have ever lived on this island we call Turtle Island.
Thank you so much. I have some very special guests tonight, and we're going to talk about this Roe v. Wade mess. And my guests are, can you pull them in? Johnnie Scott Rice, Torie Fernandez, Tiffany Mouzon, my niece, and my brother for many, many, many years, the Reverend Dr. Rodney Sadler. How's everybody tonight?
Good.
Good. And I got Ramon Grimaldi over there. Don't you say nothing, Johnny, because I think you're getting ready to do something. So let me start this with Tiffany. Roe v. Wade, what a mess. After 50 years, a law that these, excuse my French, German, and Italian, I'm not going to curse, I want to, that these idiots on the Supreme Court, these, along with their favorite Negro, Uncle Tom Thomas, they turned it all back. And I don't understand it because we grew up, we were raised to protect women, to honor women, to always be there for women. And the household that I grew up in with my father, my mother, my grandma, and other folks in my family, they didn't play that. You know, if you did something wrong, and if you said something wrong about a woman, there was a nice switch waiting outside the front door that my grandmother had wait for me. Yeah. So, Tiffany, a woman should have total autonomy over her body and what she does with it, her health care and everything else. What are your thoughts on it, sweetheart?
I agree that women and humans should have autonomy over their body and what they do and the choices that they make. I have several concerns about this particular decision and the way the court arrived at the decision. I think what's most appalling is that the court walked away or turned its back on the rule of law the way the Supreme Court works. The Supreme Court uses previous cases and precedent to make to inform new decisions. And this court in this decision, um, as you'll see if you read the joint dissenting opinion, um, the Justices Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan all three said that this court decision betrays its own guiding principles and
Mhm.
undermines its own legitimacy. And for me, that is a big problem for democracy because the Supreme Court is a third branch of our government. And if this branch of government does not follow its own guiding principles and its own rule of law, where does that leave democracy? And so I think it's a given, even though in this country it is still something we fight for and we have to protect. To me, this is more so about power structures in our government and our democracy because our civil rights are always at stake. So not to speak lightly on it, but for me, from my legal perspective, that is what's really concerning to me. I do think that as a woman, as certainly as a black woman, we've always been fighting for autonomy over our bodies, and that comes internally from our communities, it comes from our religions, and it comes from cultures. So I think that that's something have women and men have been fighting to preserve and protect because it's a human right. So I think a lot of the other conversations around abortion are a distraction because the
Yes.
true issues are much larger and there's much more at stake than people's beliefs or value systems about what they believe about abortion.
I guess you all are wondering about this very smart young woman that just spoke. She is a graduate of Emory University, and she got a law degree from uh, the University of District of Columbia. I'm very proud of her. She's also a member of the Gullah Geechee Nation, and I love her. That's my niece. Now, I want to go to you, Johnny Scott Rice, ma'am. Your thoughts on this whole bunch of mess. I can't hear you. You got to
Okay,
unmute.
I'm unmuting.
All right.
First off, a man can't have a baby. That's why they act so stupid. Let's start there. Because if one man have a baby, we wouldn't have this problem. We would not be having this conversation.
That's right.
It is a strong body that can carry a baby, sometime 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So what right does a man have to tell me what I have to carry in my body because he wants it? 99% of the men that are against abortion are nothing but male whores that screw anything that moves. Leave a trail of babies all over the place, ain't paying for none of them. And the women who allow them to control them like that just need to understand they're in control. God gave us the bodies to bear babies, not men. And they need to keep their mouths shut, go to work, and take care of those babies that they're making out here. It's just that simple.
You're right. Johnny Scott Rice, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm a 4th generation Washingtonian. I still own the house I grew up in Northeast. 7 generations have come out of that house. I am chair of the National Congress of Black Women, DC Metro chapter. I am also a founding member. I am also a member of the Mayor's DC Serve Board. And I am an active community person. I'm president of our Black Club. And I'm just me.
Oh yeah, I know that's right. And I was so honored to meet her. That is a lady you don't mess with.
That's true, because I don't play. I've never been good at games, and I've never been good at being in groups that don't move forward. that stay in the same place. I can't stay in the same place. I have to move forward.
Mhm.
And I'm an Aquarian, so people say that's what I'm about. So I guess I live what I'm supposed to be. I'm
Yep.
nosy. I'm mean sometimes. I'm nice sometimes. But I won't tolerate this thing that's going on now. I'll be in the streets like I was when I was younger.
Mhm. Now, let me go to a member of your posse,
Okay.
Torie Fernandez Whitney. Please tell us what you think about this whole thing of this Roe v. Wade mess, this white man's
Sure,
mess.
absolutely. Well, I can't agree more with Tiffany and Miss Johnnie in their remarks thus far. I think that this decision is a culmination of a political strategy that has been in place since Roe versus Wade was really ruled on by the court in the 70s. And this has been a political strategy that has been very open with the Federalist Society and other conservative groups, very actively challenging the law over time, as well as providing each Republican president that has been elected during that time a list of conservative judges that they knew and had the full expectation of overturning this law. The consequences of this are grave for women, but particularly women in the South, the geographic South of the US, where we have the worst health outcomes for women of color, the worst infant mortality rates, and the worst access to health care. So I fear that if some strategic action is not taken, some really thoughtful action is not taken, that we are condemning future generations of women to what amounts, in my opinion, to torture if you have no autonomy over your body.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. So I'm a public policy advocate, a nonprofit executive here in the District of Columbia, and a former member of Mayor Fenty's cabinet. I'm the former drug czar of the District of Columbia, and I served in that capacity for about 4 years.
Okay. And you're my sister, and I love you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now I'm going to go to my heavy top gun over here, the Reverend Dr. Rodney Sadler. Hey, bro, how you doing, man?
I am blessed and pleased to be with you this evening. Thank you, Jay, for welcoming me on this program with you.
Okay. What are your thoughts on all of this?
I have to say that I am incredibly disappointed in our nation. A group that we call the quote-unquote Supreme Court would make a decision that they knew would be so consequential, that would be so troubling. A group of people who have all said that they believe that the Roe versus Wade decision at different points in time, they've said this is settled law, that they would not only take this on, but cause so much consternation in our nation. I'm wholly troubled by that. I am, in all honesty, I'm a person who is quote unquote pro-life. I believe that we should protect life at all points in time. But I'm also a person who's decidedly pro-choice, i.e., a woman should have the right to choose what goes on in her body. As your niece said earlier, every human being should have the right to choose what goes on with their body. Sister Johnnie said earlier that this is a right that a man should not have anything to say about. So I'm wholly there as we begin this conversation. And I'm wholly frustrated. I was wholly frustrated, I have to say, that in the 2 days, in one instance, they made a decision that said that it is a unassailable
I'm
right,
coming to you. No problem.
an unassailable right to do
About
what
you.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
An unassailable right to do whatever you want to with a gun. That this gun, the right to preserve what goes on with a gun, is sacrosanct. but what a woman does with her own body is subject to the whims of the state. It seems counterintuitive and oxymoronic if you think about those two decisions over the course of 2 days. But there's one thing I want to say that, in spite of all this, I think needs to be said, and that's the fact that I was listening to worship on Saturday. I was in chapel and in worship on Saturday, and I heard the song "We Shall Overcome." I went to a park with a friend of mine later on that afternoon, and she gave me a framed copy of a testimony from a time when she was in a church with a group of people, and the framed copy of the song was "We Shall Overcome." Later on, as we were walking, we ran into somebody who was from the church where she was singing that. And I said, you know what, God, I think God is trying to tell me something. It's that we shall overcome, that we have not come to the end of this yet. The Supreme Court decision is just a minor battle in a much larger war. And we will win this war. We will overcome all the hardships and the harassment that they put up against us. We will overcome this gun law. We will overcome the Second Amendment and its faulty reasoning. We will overcome and restore, in essence, what Roe versus Wade did, and maybe we'll get it even better than we did the first time around. This is not over. We will overcome, and we will come to a better situation by the time this day is done.
Thank you so much. I want to show you a sign that I made. Can everybody see that? The United Snakes of America, the white supremacist court. My son was in town yesterday. I hadn't seen him in a few months. And we were talking about that. And he said, well, let me just print something out for you. I said, okay. And that's what he came up with. And he's also a preacher in Chicago. So, Rodney, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are.
I am the Reverend Dr. Rodney S. Sadler, Jr. I'm an associate professor of Bible at Union Presbyterian Seminary, and I'm also the director of the Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation. Serve on a number of boards here, worked with the NAACP, the Moral Monday movement here in North Carolina, and just trying to be involved on God's side. Maybe I don't know what the popular side is. I don't know what the politically astute side is, but I just want to know where God is. I want to put myself there with God.
There you go. Thank you so much, brother. Now, let me go with the pretty one first. Leslie Fry. Leslie is my executive producer of my television show. Leslie.
Hello, everybody. I am also a believer in Jesus. I personally do not believe in taking a life, but I do believe in the inalienable right of free will, which God has birthed us with, and choice. Free will has been existing since Adam and Eve, since they made the decision to take the apple off the tree and take a bite of it. Free will is something that God wants us to all have, because he wants us to, in the end, to choose him. And, God didn't make us to be mindless drones to serve him. He made us in his image so that we could choose freely. So in that aspect, I believe in a woman's right to choose. I do not feel that this is anything about women's rights. I think this is about the rights being taken away of the minorities, the people of color, the poor. Mm-hmm. This is something that is being lauded over us by our government because they feel that we are getting too many advantages. And that's what I think. And by doing that, by doing this, by this one thing that they can disband, which is the right to choose, by doing this, then they feel that our kingdom will be knocked down. If you think about it, everything that we have accomplished here in America when it comes to the rights of individuals has been perpetrated by people of color. And so therefore, with us having that influence, this is the one thing that they feel will definitely dissolve our unity, will dishearten us, will make us think that we don't have any hope. But I will say this, there are more of us than there are of them. And so, therefore, we have a voice. And our voice is the one thing that we can utilize to make a change. Our votes, our protesting, our comments, putting people in the correct place. And yes, I'm saying this to my evangelical friends who think this craziness. I am saying this. I am okay with losing some of my friends who are disillusioned because I don't feel that a man made religion dictates to me my relationship about my body and what I believe or my decision making. No woman ever goes into an abortion clinic and lightly, just casually says, I'm going to have an abortion. This is a decision that lives with them for the entirety of their lives. And every woman that I have known that has ever had an abortion still lives with that. But this is a decision that they have to make because they are at a position in their life where they're hopeless. They don't have any other means. It could be a rape situation. It could be any of those things. To dictate to somebody that they carry a baby based on an incestual relationship or rape is horrific. And what I'm saying here is desperate people will do desperate things. Before we had these rights, women were having botched abortions, dying, bleeding to death. You don't understand how horrific this is going to be for these communities. Not to mention, politics and religion they are not a marriage. They don't match. They don't meld together. When you mix politics with religion, you're going to have blood on your hands. And you think about it, every time someone stepped in with a religious right, like slaves, that you will always be slaves, the right to make someone believe in a white God and to kill them in the name of God, this causes blood on people's hands, and this is what they're going to have.
Okay. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut across you.
No, I really do feel that all of these people who are thinking they're making the right decision are going to be very surprised when they meet the master and he says he doesn't know them.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna tell you something else. My mom had a friend that was raped, and I was just a little boy, and she was trying to figure out what to do about it. So she mentioned to my mother, I'm gonna have an abortion because this is not righteous at all. So my mother told her, I understand what you're saying, and you don't know what you're carrying. So you need to rid yourself of that. She said, but God's going to be mad at me. She said, no, God is not going to be mad at you because that was not within God's will, what happened to you. So that's my take on it.
And Elder, that makes sense because that was not in God's will. Men has authority over anything that they do, evil or good. They make that decision. Men make that decision.
And you don't want to be part and party of that. Ramon.
Yes, sir.
Your take.
Well, I'm about to say something that people aren't going to like at first, but you'll come to it. So just sit still for a second. I think this is one of the greatest things that could have happened, this decision. I think it is timely. I think it is something that we desperately needed. And I'll tell you why. Because if you looked, Rodney King was not enough. Mother Emanuel Church was not enough. Then we had George Floyd. It wasn't enough. We've had Buffalo. It wasn't enough. Every time we've seen something happen, it wasn't exactly enough to get us motivated enough to give everybody a personal stake. Well, then you look, Charlottesville, with these fools running around saying the Jews shall not replace us. That wasn't enough. 56 people dying in Las Vegas, just listening to country music wasn't enough because this so-called silent majority had come forth and they were unleashed by some orange lunatic in the White House. And you're thinking, well, you know what? Pandora's box has been opened and there's no way to close it now that evil has been unleashed. Well, maybe this is enough to rally people enough to understand you have got to vote in November like your clothes are on fire. You have got to come out and just rail against the system like you are out of your mind. And this may be just the thing that has to happen to let people know. If you have a stake in anything, you stake your claim. Maybe this is where the buck stops. Maybe this is where enough from these right-wing fools is enough. Maybe this is it. And so right now, I pray for the women in the meantime that are gonna possibly suffer from having back alley abortions. We thought we had matured and that society had, rid itself of stupidity and danger for people, but we haven't, because we see that's not true every day. So I hope that they will be all right until this mess is straightened out. But maybe this is the spark plug that's going to get it all straightened out. I hope so.
I would like to get the perspective of a spiritual leader, Dr. Rodney Sadler.
Yes, my brother.
Is there something in the Holy Bible? Go right ahead.
Thank you so much for asking me this question, because I get tired of people talking about this Roe versus Wade decision as though this was a religious-based decision. Religion is used all the time as a prop by the conservatives, by the right, and they often use it in such ways that are fundamentally problematic. If you look at the Hebrew Bible, the book of Exodus, chapter 21, verse 22, is perhaps the only text in the Hebrew Bible that impinges even implicitly on the issue of abortion. And what we see in that particular instance is that the way that you look at the life of a woman is that the life of a woman is a reality. It is something that is actual. It is something that's there. The life of an unborn fetus is a potentiality. So there is a different judgment that takes place for the taking of the life of a woman than there is for the taking of the life of a fetus. I think in the Hebrew Bible, it suggested that if a woman's life is taken, then there is an eye for an eye, a life for a life. If you take the life of a fetus, then the father gets to decide in that moment what the penalty will be. And there's a limitation on what that penalty will be. In essence, what that suggests is that by reasoning through the text, that there should be a different way of viewing the life of a woman. I.e., if a woman has been raped, if a woman has been abused, if a woman has been violated, if a woman's life is put at stake, there should be a different way of evaluating that than there is for the life of an unborn fetus. Now, I respect the life of an unborn fetus. I would even go so far as to say an unborn fetus is a human life, but I would not put that on an equivalent level with the life of a mother. Let me just go to a further level and say, far too often we allow people to abuse the Bible for their own political and ideological purposes, oftentimes contrary to the Bible. How can you be the same group of people that on one day say that there is a unlimited right to own weapons that kill human beings, and then the next day come back and say, oh, we're trying to protect human life? No, if you truly are, quote unquote, pro-life, the first thing that you should do is recognize that the Second Amendment of the United States of America is not given by God. It is not a God-given right to own weapons that kill other human beings. And the God who says, that we should beat our swords into plowshares and our spears into pruning hooks is not a God that's going to be all right with an unlimited access to weapons that kill other human beings. The God that says we should study war no more is a God that is working against violence, not trying to bring more potential violence into societies. And why would you be a group of people that sits down and says, this God wants us to somehow or another facilitate access to guns, i.e., we've got too many guns, so the solution is bringing more guns into it. And then the next day say, we're here to protect human life. No, there's a fundamental problem with utilizing this sort of religious reasoning. If we're going to be consistent, we need to begin to think in ways that move beyond these ultra-conservative interpretations of the biblical text that are utilized to support a faulty and flawed ideology. We've got to be able to be faithful in the way that we discern and interpret the text. And if there is one good thing, your brother Ramon, I want to lift up he said that this is a opportunity that's been presented to us. If there is an opportunity that's presented, maybe it's an opportunity to begin to reflect and to think more seriously and more critically about the way that we interpret the Bible and the way that we utilize this in our efforts to bring about politics. I have to say that I think that the Bible is a wonderful tool that we can utilize and that can help us as we make decisions in the world. But the Bible is a political document. A, we should recognize that. B, if we're utilizing the Bible, we should do it in a way that is circumspect, that is careful, that takes the context in which the text was written into consideration before we make decisions. And we should be careful. Any interpretation of the text that lifts us up high enough to put our foot on somebody else's neck, to take away somebody else's rights, to abuse another human being, that's a wrong-headed interpretation. And we should start at that point in time. That should be hermeneutical principle number one as we're reading the text.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Rodney, for saying that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I am so proud of you for standing up and saying that, because not all of our religious leaders believe the way that you do. But in the context of what you are saying, that we do misinterpret the Bible. Many of us only listen to what is said behind a pulpit. We never study it for ourselves. And you are absolutely right. Whenever you take the word of God and use it to put your foot on someone else's neck, you are doing the wrong thing. You are doing us as believers and people that we are trying to reach out to a disservice by doing this. This is why Christianity, evangelicalism, all of this stuff is a mockery to people now, because of how men of power have taken that word and utilized it to control masses.
Absolutely. And I'd like to interject something in that too before I go back to Tiffany. This whole false ideology about holding somebody in bondage is absolutely wrong. And if you don't believe it, there's a movie on Netflix titled Slavery by Another Name. The incident in Uvalde, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Had they been little white children, they would have rushed into that classroom and saved maybe not all of them, but the majority of those students and maybe even the teachers. It is so sickening to see the history of how they have treated people of color in these United States of America. The founding of America was founded on bloodshed. They came across the Atlantic Ocean with only one desire. That was to exterminate the American Indian and take our lands from us. There were 112 million of us in what we call the United States in 1492. By the time the 1930s got here, they had murdered all but less than 2 million of us. How in the world do you get rid of 110 million people? Only because of your evilness and your patterns of murder and genocide. That bothers me.
Elder, not to mention taming the masses and saying they were savages because they did not believe the way that they believed. There were many people who were killed in the name of God.
Hmm. And you know what? The other thing that I look at, King Leopold of Belgium went into Africa and murdered millions of innocent African people only because he could. You know, if you study the history of this white man, you know, and let me clarify something. All white people are not bad. Just like all black people are not good and all native people are not good. Dr. King made a most profound statement when I heard him say it in my life. Do not judge me by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. Tiffany, your shot.
Thank you all. I've appreciated all of the comments that I've heard this evening. But picking up where or contributing to where we are right now, I am an advocate of keeping religion separate from government for several reasons that's already been mentioned. The current state of the religion that we practice, Christianity that we practice, I believe has been tainted by racism and white supremacy. And because of that,
Yes.
definitely believe there needs to be space between using religious text or doctrine to create law. And while we know that theological principles and beliefs and faith shape human beings and human beings make the law, I do believe there needs to be a separation because there are so many different interpretations and there are so many different ways that people understand and believe and engage those texts. And there's not really a mechanism that I know of that will put everyone on the same page. The problem that I see that we have in the United States is that we are supposed to be a nation that does not have an official religion. We're not a theocracy. However, on our currency, it's there. It's in our procedure and policy. And I think until we do address that, we're going to continue to see as Torie mentioned, this is political strategy. This has been planned and executed over many years and across generations. And so we need to address the issue of religion in this country and for ourselves personally. And I do believe that we need to keep it separate as possible because of all of those concerns.
Thank you, Tiffany. And Torie, let's hear your thoughts on this.
Sure. I agree with Tiffany 100%. I'm the product of 12 years of Catholic school. And, you know, if the world were governed according to Catholic theology, it would not be a good place or a fun place. So I think that's really important to keep a firm separation between church and state. And the seepage that we're seeing is quite dangerous, not just in the Roe v. Wade decision, but also in the decision from the court just yesterday, siding with the football coach who was praying in the middle of the field of a public school. We started seeing some of this degradation, right, during the 90s with prayer groups at schools and things like that. But the one thing that I have heard in the past 2 weeks that has concerned me deeply was one of the witnesses from the January 6th hearing. When he was talking about the Constitution, he made a statement that he believed that the Constitution was divinely inspired. And because of his faith, he could not break what he perceived as his oath to do what others wanted him to do. The Constitution is not divinely inspired. The Constitution is a political document. It was a document designed to preserve property rights. It was a document designed to create an ownership ladder for people who had come over from England, many of whom were not landowners and could only become so when they arrived in this country and stole it. So I I think that we have to fight back really strongly against this um, the seepage of religion into secular matters, and that we really have to push back on this idea that our founding of this country was in any way divinely inspired. The second thing that I want to say relates to Ramon's comments. I am hopeful that we have reached that inflection point here in this country, that so much has happened that people will finally stand up. But just the results from the polls last night show a true enthusiasm gap from the primaries that were held. In Illinois, for example, in one race, over 100,000 Republicans turned out, and I counted less than 60,000 Democrats. So, whatever needs to happen, um, it needs to happen quickly because the fall is going to be here before we know it.
Thank you. I want to kind of piggyback on something that you said, Torie. The Constitution has never been divine in any way, because when they came over here, they didn't know what democracy was or anything else. They watched the Haudenosaunee, or the people up north, the Six Nations, the Mohawks, the Onondagas, that group of people. They had something called the Great Law of Peace. So they buddied up. And in other words, they sucked some of the Indians in just to get in there and find out what it was all about. Their United States Constitution, the whole concept of the Great Law of Peace, was stolen by the same white folks that came over here, those wig wearing, powdered wig wearing, tight pants wearing, buckle shoes boys that came over here. They stole the concept from us, our people, and they molded it into something that is not true, it's not righteous, or anything else. And that's what we have been forced to live under, is a white man's law, a European concept. And if you remember, you've heard it now lately, this experiment, that's what they call this government, an experiment, a European experiment. We don't need your damn experiment. Take it back where you brought it from. So I just had to put that in there. Anybody want to jump in? Johnnie, did you want? Go ahead, Johnnie.
They don't want them back either. Start there. That's the reason why they were here. They put them out. They didn't want them. They were the heathens.
Mm-hmm.
But
the criminals.
Yeah, and heathens.
Yeah.
They were raping each other before they got here and started raping the Indian women.
Mm-hmm.
They were raping each other before they went to Africa and snatched them and put them on a ship and raped them there and then raped them here.
Mm-hmm.
So those people, their generations have been taught hate. Nobody is born hating anybody, especially a baby, you know. Baby don't do nothing but want his mama's milk and his daddy's love. That's what they want. And security until they're old enough that you send them to school and don't have to worry. You're going to worry as a parent. You're going to worry. I know.
Right.
I get to. But these people that left, their hate, their ignorance, their selfishness was all started on that ship. I'm telling you, those people over there thought they were going to drown in the ocean and they survived. And there's a reason they survived. And I think because God let us know by letting people like that be in the world that he is still in charge and he's going to always win. because even with what he let happen to us, the Native Americans, we are still the strongest races of people there are on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
All the minorities
And we
are
outnumber
strong
them.
people. White people are not strong people because they're ignorant. And they were inbred worse than we were.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that they learned from them jail cells over there where they came out of, and the swamps that they came out of, they
And the
brought all
mental
this right here with them. And they portrayed it on the Native Americans. Then they went to Africa and put it on them. Everywhere they went, there became hate. There became killings. Look how they love guns more than they love their own families. Who loves a gun that much? A gun can't make you no money if you ain't doing it right. And being a police officer with a gun getting paid. But you got all these guns in your house, and if these kids are smart enough to make a gun on a computer, they need to be out here trying to find a cure for sickle cell, like I got, diabetes, like I got. These are people with brains. You got brains. You got to be a brain to get on a computer and make a gun. And they're wasting their brain power. And it's hurting all of us.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sadler, you got 3 minutes. We're right up on the 10-minute mark.
So I'd love to just say that the Constitution is not a biblical document. It's not a theological document. It is a product of people who were, in theory, seeking to develop a better way of living. But they made this document. It's a synthetic document that they made themselves. And it's also a plastic document. They made it plastic. They made it malleable, flexible, because they knew that it had to change. It wasn't perfect, that over the years, we should go back and constantly rework it to make it better. We're trying to strive towards a more perfect union, a union that has never been perfect, never has been, and only will be if we continue to work on it, to shape it, to reimagine it, and to change it. We're at the point now where we need to reimagine it, where we need to go back and say the Constitution is flawed. The Second Amendment is wrong, doesn't work, may have made sense when there were 3 million people in this nation, doesn't make sense when there's 330 some odd million people in this nation. So it needs to be reimagined, it needs to be reworked, and it's only our faithful duty as people in a democracy to go back and say, where is our nation failing? Where can we improve it? How can we make it more perfect going forward?
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Ramon?
All I'll say is I've always said the stupidest animal in the forest is the American voter, because only an American voter will vote for something that is counterintuitive to them and is against their own self-interest, and they'll do it for the stupidest of reasons. I have to go with Joyce Myers, who one time said that Jesus did not come here and die for you to have religion. He came here for you to have relationship and right standing with God. And all of this religion that we're seeing is really a problem. But then I'm heartened by seeing, and I'm happy to say I know Reverend Sadler. I'm glad to see aware clergymen. I always was afraid if I leave DC and leave my pastor, Reverend Dr. Howard John Wesley, that I wouldn't find people that had that kind of awareness. I'm just glad to see somebody like Reverend Sadler there. It gives me hope to continue to follow my Christian faith.
Okay, thank you, Ramon. Appreciate you. Torie, you got 1 minute to give your closing thoughts.
Sure. As always, thank you, Jay, for having me. It's really just a great privilege to be in dialogue with everyone here tonight. Reverend Sadler, I enjoy how you contextualize faith and our responsibilities to it so much. Tiffany, I absolutely love the way that your mind works and how you break down all these concepts for us. Miss Johnnie, of course, you're a second mother to me. And Jay, you've become a really great friend, and I just appreciate you so much. Thank you for a good show tonight.
Oh, I guess it's
Can
my
I
turn.
say one thing before we go? I
Yeah,
want to
but
thank
you got 30 seconds to say it. We got to get out of here.
Reverend Sadler. I enjoyed you. Thank you. You are a unique pastor.
He's a unique thinker and a unique man.
Well, he sure is a
Tiffany,
unique pastor compared to these that are teaching with their hate out there.
I hear you. Tiffany, can you do it in 30 seconds, sweetheart?
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And I'm so grateful to be here and have met you all, and definitely appreciate the discussion, always learning and growing. And Uncle Jay, thank you. You know, I love you.
Love you too, sweetheart. So these are my closing thoughts. My grandfather from South Carolina, my mom's dad, whenever we went down there as little boys to visit for the summer, he had this big old oak tree that he built a table around. And it would be like maybe 5, 7, 8 of us down there. And Grandpa would take us out to the table and sit us down. And he would just stand there and he would sit down and look at us. Do you boys know what it's all about? And we would just look at him. He said, okay, I'm going to tell you what it's all about. It's not about the color of your skin. It's not about the color of your eyes. It's not about the texture of your hair. It's not about the clothes you wear. It is not about the deity that you pray to and call God. He said, do you all know what it's all about? And by the time he had finished lecturing us, we were all sitting there astounded. And Mikey says, he was the youngest. No, Grandpa, what's it all about? He would stand up and put his right hand over his heart and say, it's how you treat my heart. That's what it's all about. My friends are those that treat my heart right. And your brother and sister do not have to look like you to be your brother or your sister. And that's how I have tried to live my life. I don't have a color thing about me, unless your mind is the wrong color. And I can get very colorful with telling you how I feel about you. So with that, I'll say in the Cherokee language, Danada, Goai, Wado. And will you all come back again sometime? Yes, no, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Anytime, brother.
You know what? I love you, man. You my bro. So we'll talk again next week, next Wednesday, and we'll see what God has in store for us next week. Talk to you then. I love you all of you. I'm talking to everybody out there. Even if it's almost impossible to love you, I love you in spite of yourself. Do what you got to do. Treat people right and treat other people's hearts the way you want your heart treated. Danada, Goai, Wado.